How you doing, wrestling fans, and welcome to another edition of John Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight Podcast, the only wrestling podcast that brings you back 30 years with vintage audio, featuring some of the biggest names of that time, and this episode is no exception. We got a good one. The Pro Wrestling Spotlight covered all the news stories and breaking developments that happened in real time, and now we relive those moments right here on this podcast. Today, we'll review the April 17th, 1993 Pro Wrestling This Week program, which aired on WNYG in Babylon, New York. Our special guest 30 years ago was Jimmy Cornette. And as we move over to the Pro Wrestling Spotlight from that same day on WEVD, we bring on the Genius Lanny Poffo. Besides those guests, we will focus on the Fiasco, which was WCW's debut at the theater at Madison Square Garden, which we covered on both shows. So it's going to be a good one today. I want to remind you, if you haven't already joined, please join our Patreon page. All of these archive shows are there in their entirety, and you get this podcast early, 5 days early. You also get the video podcast early. So for $5 a month, patreon.com/John Arezzi, and other levels are there for your enjoyment. If you want vintage videos, if you want 8mm films, photo sets, and a lot more, go to patreon.com/John Arezzi. And in just, less than 2 weeks, I will be at 80s WrestleCon, and that takes place in the Menon Sports Arena, Morristown, New Jersey, promoted by Tommy Fierro. The doors open at 11 a.m. I have a table. There'll be posters. There'll be the book Matt Memories. There'll be some T-shirts. And I'll be appearing there on May the 6th, a Saturday, 11 a.m. Come out and say hello to me. My nephew Dominic will be with me. And some really cool names will be appearing at 80s WrestleCon this year on May the 6th. Bret the Hitman Hart is the headliner, but you also have Dory Funk Jr., Wendy Richter, Powers of Pain. There's a karaoke contest that's hosted by Bill Apter. Dr. D, David Schultz will be there. I'm sure he won't be singing. Demolition will be there. Killer Bees, Tony Atlas, Tommy Rich, Nikita Koloff, Magnum TA, Papa Shango, Jerry Briscoe, and many, many more. Go to 80swrestlingcon.com for more information. Let's bring on Marsh, our creative director, our producer, the man who is always busy. Always busy. Man, yeah. You're a busy dude.
Yeah, it's been good. I've been getting busier, and I like that.
And you added a new element to some of the things that we do here for the YouTube channel, which are called shorts, I guess. And those are pretty cool, man. And they're getting a lot of views. And, thank you for putting those together. They look pretty good. There's one up there now with Sonny Blaze talking about Bully Ray, who we haven't heard anything about. Ironically, there's been not a peep coming from that camp in regard to the show that we did with Broadway Sonny Blaze. So, hey, but those shorts are looking good. The YouTube channel's doing well. And Marsh, man, you're doing a freaking great job. You freaking guy, yo.
Yeah, I was curious about the shorts because I haven't messed with them much, and I keep hearing they're important and they do well. And so I decided to mess with it one day, and I was like, look, I got a little bit of time between stuff that I should be working on. Let me try and knock this out. They take so long to put together, but I think I have a way of doing them quicker. My only concern is because they're only 60 seconds. No, how many people talk without pauses in 60 seconds and say the thing unless they know they're recording a short, So,
well, those edits look good though. The edits look good, and they're very consistent. They flow very nicely. So go to the YouTube channel that is youtube.com/Pro Wrestling Spotlight. Check out that stuff. We got great response from the Medusa show. People really dig it.
That was cool.
So we've had a nice little run here, and we're planning some special stuff. I mean, that reunion that we talked about with Broadway Sonny Blaze, the Power Twins, Bruce Jacobs, Donnie Liable, that is coming close to being a reality. So hopefully, I think we're going to be taping that in the next couple of weeks, as long as we get everybody's schedule.
That's going to be cool.
copacetic. So we won't review any shows that day when we tape that show. That'll be purely a reunion of some of the original characters that was on Pro Wrestling Spotlight almost 35 years ago, 1989.
Yeah. Just to see what kind of stories you guys can spark from each other, little memories you guys can
we'll have clips. We'll have clips. We won't be covering a specific show, but we'll have some hilarity when we do that. It's going to be a lot of fun. The Power Twins, I just hope that they behave themselves, and I think they probably won't, but
you want them to behave themselves. None of us do.
Yeah, that's true. It'll be fun. But 30 years ago, there was some stuff happening in the wrestling business. Of course, we were really talking about that WCW fiasco on both programs. And we had a couple of really cool guests, one in the morning with Jimmy Cornette and the other in the evening with the Genius Lanny Poffo.
Well, and you had two, because you also brought in Henry Terranova in the second show, too.
That is right, because he refereed that Chris Benoit match where there was a little bit of a controversy. So we'll talk about that as well. So, yeah, it was a good couple of shows that day.
Yeah, and I mean, and what a wild time. There's some clips I can't wait to get to, because this was another show that was just so much a moment in time for a couple of other reasons as well. But I ended up looking up the Paramount show to see if I could find it, like to watch it, and I didn't even realize it was just an untelevised show.
It was a house show, and a shitty one at that.
Exactly. Like, why would you fuck up a house show of all shows to do?
Especially the first time ever, and it wasn't the big arena at Madison Square Garden, but it was the theater at Madison Square Garden, and this was their closest opportunity to get into that mecca of all arenas, and they blew it. They blew it big time on this show.
Was attendance particularly poor?
It wasn't a sellout, but it was a healthy crowd. I mean, I think the Felt Forum held something in the vicinity 5,000, maybe. Not really that sure. But, they did a piss poor job of advertising it as well in the local market. They just blew it. It was just a fiasco. And Ric Flair, who had re-entered the organization, was not even there. It's crazy.
Yeah, we'll definitely dig into that more and more. I was just trying to think, maybe if their ticket sales were low enough, maybe they really didn't care, because they said, we're not coming back anyways.
Well, New York City, you have to care. That was a misstep. That was a major misstep on their part. That's the market they wanted to be in, and they had their opportunity, and they shit the bed. Not mincing words here today.
Oh, yeah. Well, did you want to get into it? I don't have other stuff to pitch into. I say we go to Donnie Liebel's capsule of the morning.
Okay.
I like starting with Donnie.
Yes.
And his capsule in the evening was almost identical, so I thought the first one was going to be just well enough.
That's fine with me. Let's do it.
Well, first of all, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the capsule. And apparently, Hulk Hogan will be taking his World Wrestling Federation Heavyweight Championship on the road, long-distance style, that is, to Japan. On May 3rd, in what is now believed to be a non-title matchup, the Hulkster is scheduled to oppose New Japan Wrestling's The Great Muta. Now, Muta is the current International World Grand Prix champion. Sting is also booked on a card opposite Scott Norton, and the legendary Antonio Inoki is scheduled to come out of retirement in the tag contest. Now, the Observer reports ringside tickets for this colossal show, which is expected to draw anywhere near 60,000 fans or more, are going for over $200. Well, it appears a deal has been signed, sealed, and is ready to be delivered to bring Tully Blanchard back into the wrestling game. Word has it that Blanchard will be reunited with his former tag partner, Arn Anderson, on World Championship Wrestling's Slamboree pay-per-view in Atlanta on May 23rd. Since leaving wrestling in 1990, Blanchard has been guest preaching in churches throughout the South. Tonight in Minneapolis, Minnesota, former world champion Terry Funk clashes with Road Warrior Hawk on a card that will include several top names from New Japan Wrestling. And in case you don't see the show in the coming weeks, let us tell you that Jim Ross will be replacing Gorilla Monsoon as the play-by-play man alongside Bobby Heenan on the WWF's Wrestling Challenge program. Others making news in wrestling this week at the last wrestling WWF TV taping, Steve the Wild Thing Ray. Remember him from Herb Abrams' UWF Productions? Well, it said that he impressed the company's brass, as did the Lightning Kid. Last Sunday at the National Wrestling Collectors Association Awards Banquet, New York's own Georgianne Macropolis was awarded Best Fanzine Monthly of 1992 for her wrestling chatterbox, and Ric Flair was chosen by the association as Wrestler of the Year. Looking to the out-of-town match sites for tonight's ring action, the USWA is in Nashville with Randy Savage in their lineup. WCW has a card in Detroit, and the WWF puts on 2 shows today in Glasgow, Scotland, and Birmingham, England. Finally, on this date in wrestling history, it was in 1979, 14 years ago in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, that Rick Martel wrestled twice in singles action and won both contests with Dick Slater and Jerry Monty. Also on the card, Stevie Aoki defeated Carl von Steiger for the Hawaiian Heavyweight Championship. For This Week in Pro Wrestling, I'm Don Leibel reporting. Capsule time, 10:08.
Always interesting to hear these reports and hear names from long ago.
Yeah.
And Donnie was on top of all of it. You know, he really did his research before each and every one of the news capsules. That's why it was so cool listening back now after all these years, just to hear how much work he put into these things.
Yeah, he never seemed unprepared at all. He never seemed like he was winging it. Like, I wonder too, when he does the This Week in Wrestling history, he had to have a stack of magazines or something, right? Like, he couldn't have just looked up online.
No, there was no online.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was quite the collector, as we all were back then. And he was, even back then, kind of a really cool historian.
Do you think some of that stuff he just knew? Hey, this was the same date last, like 20 years ago?
I don't know. That's a good question for him next time we have him on. To kind of dive deep into how he did some of this historic research.
Yeah, because I'd like to know, because I know that when Jim Ross was doing his own podcast before he joined the Ad-Free Show team, he did that as well on his show. I wondered how much of that was ultimately influenced by remembering yours, right? But he always did a This Week in the History of Wrestling, and he would talk about things that happened 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago.
I enjoyed his show before the ad-free model that he's in.
Yeah.
I used to really dig the show. I listen occasionally now, but I liked the way he did it when he first started it.
I liked it a lot. I thought it was really nice. But yeah, and the more and more I hear Donnie pick up those This Week in Wrestling history, the more I wonder and think about, like, he couldn't have Googled it the way that JR could have. Like, he had to have something. He had to know something.
Well, yeah, 30 years ago. Hell yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, always good to hear from Donnie. After the capsule, you and him talk about the Paramount show for a while, and it's kind of funny because he seems like excited to ask you about it. It seems like he didn't talk to you about it. And as you keep telling him more and stuff, you just hear him go like, oh, jeez.
I deflated the air out of his balloon.
Yeah. I didn't pull that clip though, because there's plenty of times where you just beat down this Paramount show, and so I didn't want to have too many clips of it. But that's one for the Patreons that they'll get a kick out of.
Yeah, listen to the whole show on patreon.com/John Arezzi. They're there for your enjoyment.
You also had James from Seaford in.
James from Seaford was back again.
Yeah, he was there, and you brought him out because he was at the Paramount, and he said it was very disappointing. And you told him that one of the highlights of the entire show was him and I believe his brother or friend.
His friend, James and Jim.
Yeah.
Same name, different. One is James, one is Jim.
Yeah, I had to re-listen a couple times. I was like, did I miss that? Was that the same name? But they were making fun of it a lot during the show, and you said that was getting the whole section laughing.
Yeah, those two guys, especially James, would never sit still. Always twitching, always move his leg. I never forget that about that guy. Great guy. He was a good friend back then, but he was always moving around, always like, twitching around. That's just a little antidote.
Yeah.
Little memory I have. A little memory of James from Seaford.
That's cool. How often did he come through and hang out?
Whenever he wanted.
Just whenever he wanted, whenever he was around. I'm just going to down.
Whenever I needed some pot, I guess,
Oh. Hey, James, want to swing through? And grab a lunch.
I like the weed. I'm not on it right now. I promise. I'm happy because the Mets won, so I'm high on the Mets right now.
Well, yeah, and there was a lot going on in that game to make you wonder if they were gonna win. So
yeah,
especially happy.
They were taping this was a day game in LA, and Max Scherzer got thrown out of the game, and so I was kind of happy it was a day game. I had finished my walk early today and watched the day game for the Mets, and now tonight I got to watch the Blue Jays against the Astros before they head to the. I have to watch the Blue Jays every day now.
It's like part of your homework.
It's part of, but I love the team. It's a great team.
Right.
I've become a Blue Jays fan, really big time, which is really interesting. I mean, what a dynamic team! And my wish is for Blue Jays versus Mets in the World Series this year. That would be amazing.
How cool would that be if it gets down to Blue Jays and Mets, and you and Gibby get to go there and just with your opposing jerseys?
We'll be battling for sure.
With each hit, you have to buy each other a hot dog or something.
Yeah. Yeah, that show is doing really well. I mean, here's a quick little plug. The Gibby show is we release it every Monday. This past week, we had the star center fielder for the Toronto Blue Jays, Kevin Kiermaier, on with us, and what a great guy. And so, yeah, every week, we're bringing on some really cool guests. So that's the Gibby Show, available wherever you get your podcast, or go to youtube.com/the Gibby Show.
Yeah.
Back to wrestling.
Back to wrestling. Did you? You don't have to give out names, but I think about nowadays when I ran into the Good Brothers at a bar, I bought them a couple of whiskeys to see if they would hang and have a couple whiskeys. Pot was a lot more prevalent back in that era, was it not? Like, what do you mean? Guys sometimes, like in the locker rooms and stuff. Would you hang out with someone?
It would be ECW.
Oh, okay.
ECW. Those were the crazy times. I mean, when I was at WCW covering them, and of course I wasn't really allowed backstage at the WWF, the bars, the guys would hang out and drink. But as far as the pot and the other stuff that they were doing, ECW Arena was like this den of iniquity.
Right.
And you could smell it in the arena at ECW Arena. Yeah, people would be just smoking, and in the back, people would be smoking, and it was an interesting era for sure.
That's cool. Your ad reads here. You have an ad read for LNS Comic that I had to clip because this was as 1993 as it gets. I remember this. I think I had this, and I couldn't believe you were advertising it. You were laughing about it. I just think that people got to hear this. This is very 1993.
Okay.
We'll take a quick break. We'll tell you about our folks over at LNS Comics. Now, get this, folks. LNS, I was in there the other day, and they have been getting a lot of publicity over the last week or so. Do you know why? Because they have that Amy Fisher comic book, the limited edition that's out there in the marketplace, and LNS was featured on Entertainment Tonight last week. It was the lead story, and there's Larry being interviewed about the Amy Fisher Joey Buttafuoco comic book that is now a limited edition of only 5,000 copies. Right now, pick it up at LNS Comics. It comes bagged with 3 trading cards featuring Joey, Amy, and Mary Jo. I can't believe this. Call starting this Monday for the availability, and they will ship anywhere. The price is $5 for each set, plus $1.50 for postage and handling. It's very, very limited. Call Larry at 516-489-9636. 516-489-9636. It's LNS Comics. You can get that exclusive limited edition Amy Fisher Joey Buttafuoco comic book from LNS Comics. They're located at 1379 Jerusalem Avenue in North Merrick. Take Southern State Parkway to exit 24 North. Make your first left to LNS Comics. And we will return with more of the program and Jim Cornette right after this.
The Long Island Lolita, Amy Fisher.
Yeah.
I had a copy of that, It was a dual cover. Like one side was Amy, and then you'd flip it over, and the back cover was Joey Buttafuoco.
Yeah.
What a horrendous situation for Mary Jo. I mean, that thing, the headlines and the coverage of that attempted murder was incredible. And I'm, there on Long Island when it broke and it happened, and they both went on to become even more infamous. I mean, she went into porn, and he's still out there. He was, they both were. He would be frequenting the Howard Stern show years ago. But the copy that I had, I sold it. I think it was at a wrestling convention that I attended, and I think I got like $50 or $75 for it.
I think right now it's only like 30 or 40.
Oh, it's still out there? Well, wherever. Maybe someone was hot for Amy.
I mean, I think at the time, because the comic books are like that. They'll spike and then drop. Like I had this one Batman comic that was like the first version of this Batman that flipped open. And there was a period of time, it was like, I got it when it came out on the shelf because my dad owned a comic book shop. Mm-hmm. And so I had him pull one aside for me. That's why I think we had the Amy Fisher one too. And that was one that within 5 years was up to $250, this Batman one. But within 10 years after that, it was down to like a $4 comic. So it's just like, you probably hit it out when it was at its highest.
Well, I think I only sold it a couple years ago, maybe less.
Oh, well, it's still hard to get a hold of.
Yeah.
I did find pictures of it though, so there's pictures on our clips. So
yeah, Amy Fisher, what a piece of work that one was.
Yeah, and Joey Buttafuoco. I mean, what a 1990s reference. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, Joey Buttafuoco, that freaking guy.
Fucking freaking guy here. But I was just listening to it because you also opened the show. Because we're going to get to it here. You opened the show saying that, hey, just before we get too far into this, like this was the opening before you brought in Donnie. You said the Rodney King trial verdict is going to be airing, and we're going to split to CNN at some point.
That's so right.
So I was all like, oh shit, this is during the trial verdict, and then the Amy Fisher thing comes out, and I was like, this is, even if we didn't have a date on it, I would be able to figure out when it was,
I wonder if I was on the air when that happened in 94.
Oh,
maybe. We'll have to find out.
But you did come back from LNS Comics to Jim Cornette being on the phone, and I have the beginning of you and Cornette because you go right into what happened to Paramount.
Without further ado, let's bring on, direct from the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee, Mr. Jim Cornette.
Good morning, John. How you doing?
How are you doing?
Well, I always enjoy doing your radio show, but I just hate to get up this early. I was thinking maybe you ought to try to switch to, say, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on Saturday evening, because I understand there's nothing interesting going on there.
No, not at all. Matter of fact, we are just still... I don't know if we had a sermon here this morning. We lit a few candles for WCW. As they appeared, that's about all they did here in New York on Wednesday night.
Oh, that has already taken place.
Oh, man.
I did. You know what? I did not know that because I didn't keep track. And how, I know probably it's redundant for your listeners, but fill me in real briefly.
It was like a bad dream. It really was. And Jim, I'm sure that your fans who are following Smoky Mountain are hardcore wrestling fans. They crave the wrestling action which you're providing and your promotion is providing for them. These fans in New York, there were 3,500 of them in the building. They had a small advance coming into the event, but there was a good walk-up. There were 3,500 fans out of the 5,000 seats in there, and they were ready for WCW. And they left. Matter of fact, the whole show they were chanting refund, and they make the announcement after the second match that Ric Flair would not be there.
Wow.
Due to some problems with travel. And now, Flair is not on the road right now, and they should have had him in a week before time doing as many interviews as possible. But he wasn't there. The first two matches were just total duds, Then they finally get into a match where the fans are getting into. It was Chris Benoit against Ron Simmons, and the fans were into it. And then 3 minutes into the match, referee Nick Patrick runs from backstage into the ring and stops the match, saying that because there is so much activity outside the ring, because they're brawling outside the ring, that it's against WCW rules, and this match has been thrown out.
What?
And the fans just started chanting, refund, refund, refund.
Wait now, let's see. Violence in a wrestling match, that's a no-no.
That's a no-no.
Okay.
Now, I heard, I was talking to some people that said that the Athletic Commission actually stopped it, and I am trying to get a hold of, I'm a personal friend of the referee who was assigned to that match, and I'm going to hope to get him on our New York show tonight at 11 o'clock to get his story. But I left before the two main events took place. I just got up. I just couldn't take anymore. And it was just, it was poorly promoted, it was poorly booked, and the fans were very disenchanted leaving, and it was very, very sad to see, because these fans were the hardest, the most devout wrestling fans, and they didn't get their money's worth, in my opinion. Very bad, very bad.
But you know, John, sometimes things just don't surprise you.
No, but you were hoping, you know, we were all there hoping, and it just didn't happen, and that's very, very sad. So, you know, that's too bad that Smoky Mountain can't come up into this area, but I know how adverse you are to the New York traffic.
Well, maybe with your convention this year, John, something will be worked out.
I certainly hope so. We're looking forward to that.
Jimmy?
3,500.
Yeah, 3,500 out of 5,000, and me leaving early. I was just disgusted with the whole thing.
So I wonder if it really was that WCW thought that they finally made it to New York, and they felt like they were just going to be walking in a coat of mirrors, and everyone just begging and pleading to see them. Yeah. That they would just sell out immediately. And I wonder if it was at that 60% sale rate. They just said, fuck this place. They obviously didn't promote. They didn't feel like they had to.
Yeah, I mean, it was just kind of a comedy of errors, and it was a show that was highly anticipated, but didn't deliver, and especially with that match, which we'll hear, I guess we have clips with Henry later, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Where we could talk about it, and Henry, of course, was the Athletic Commission referee assigned to it, so we get a chance to talk to him, and Henry was somebody I got to know really well. Great guy, great businessman, refereed on the side. His dad was a referee too for the WWF, and Henry was a cool guy. I actually took him to Southeast Asia with another referee named Billy Caputo, who we lost a few years ago to cancer. But great guy, great referee, very passionate about the business, and just a good memory of Henry.
Yeah. So you knew him before then, it sounds like, too. Did you use him for any of your other booking stuff?
He worked my convention show later in '93, but I had got to know him when I started talking to him about refereeing. I was looking for referees to go overseas, and he was a Long Island guy, lived not too far from me, had a business there. That was successful. So I got to know him and hired him, and was not sorry. He was a professional all the time.
You go on with Jim Cornette. You're talking a lot about Smoky Mountain. They're going to start getting their tapes into famous sports videos.
That was a big video distribution company.
Was it like a specific shop, or was it like a magazine mail-in kind of a place?
It was a magazine mail-in.
Okay. All right. I just wasn't sure because the way you said it on here. And I thought it was really cool. But then he really goes in deep on his Kevin Sullivan story at Smoky Mountain about the Night Stalker. I thought that was pretty cool. But then it's 10:30.
The bulletin.
There's a bulletin. I didn't clip the bulletin from CNN, but I did clip you pitching to it and you coming back from it.
Okay.
Because I don't know. It's
news. It's news. And that was a big story back then, but caused a lot of havoc. But yeah, I was surprised even the station like WNYG insisted that we break format, especially since I was paying for the hour to get the verdict of the Rodney King trial.
Now, Jim, we have a situation here. I want to get back to talking wrestling with you. Is there any way that we could call you back in a few minutes? As you know, there's a trial out in Los Angeles that the jury has come to a verdict in regarding the Rodney King, getting serious here for a second, the Rodney King civil rights trial. Can we call you back? Because we have to break to CNN News for a special news report in just about a minute or so. Because I'd certainly like to continue this conversation. We'll call you back in just a couple minutes. Is that okay?
Well, I guess I'll let Rodney and them have their say, and then I'll come back and have mine.
Hey, can't we all just get along?
I think we can. Get along or get it on.
Yeah. Okay, we'll call you back in just a few, Jim.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Bye-bye.
Okay, we're back, and the verdict is in. 2 guilty, 2 not guilty. And that is big news here across the nation. 2 acquitted and 2 found guilty out in Los Angeles. And without further ado, let's get to someone who is guilty of running the best promotion in the United States, and that's Mr. Jim Cornette.
John, you know what happened?
What's that?
They went to a draw. The easiest decision to not whee anybody off. They went to a draw.
It's a 1-year Broadway.
There you go.
Yeah, that's something that really, as far as that particular verdict, hopefully everyone will keep their cools, and I don't think there's too much reason for people to be breaking windows and pulling people out of cars now. So hopefully everything will remain cool and calm here.
I understand that last year, when the original verdict came down, somebody broke your window and tried to pull you out of it, but they forgot to break the windshield, and that's the only one that you would, well, never mind.
Sit at him, right. Hey, I've lost some weight since then, Jim.
Okay.
I've been on the Jim Cornette diet.
IcoPro?
IcoPro, that's exactly right. Conditioning. I've been conditioning. Working out with the Hulkster.
Yeah, the fat jokes.
It was news. I liked how you guys handled it too, because it was a thing that could have been really serious, and you guys, without being like off color about any of it, were able to lighten the mood up between each other, and I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, that was very, very volatile. Very volatile. I mean, throughout the country, the civil unrest that took place because of that. And that was kind of the first real, there's so much that you see on the news today where people get killed. And I mean, it's just, I'm not going to get into too much politics or whatever, but it was, at the time, it was a predominant story, as they all should be when something like that happens to somebody. Yeah. But it was a scary time as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was cool and it was funny. And it sounded like, because you talk about it again later, you were really working on your weight at that point. It sounded like you were.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I had ballooned up really. That year was a bad year for me. And when I got back from Southeast Asia, I mean, my weight by the time the convention took place, I think I was losing weight. But the last year, 92 was really bad with all the stress. I had gone up to almost 380. I was 388 pounds at one time. I'm 270 today, so that's 100 and almost 120 pounds that I've lost since the 90s, and I still would love to lose 20 or 30 pounds, but at my age, and even though I walk 2 to 3 miles a day, I can't seem to crack that 270 mark for whatever reason. Maybe I need to go on Ozempic.
Which one's Ozempic?
Ozempic. It's that drug that you shoot up once a week. It's for diabetics, and it's causing people to lose massive amounts of weight. And I read a report that the older you are, if you lose even 5 or 10% of your body weight after the age of 65, that could kill you too.
What?
That was a report from last week.
All right, well.
It doesn't matter. If you have a healthy lifestyle, that's bad for you. Sometimes it's good, and then they change their minds. They go back and forth. So,
yeah.
Nothing is good. Just live your life the way you do. Try not to overindulge on anything except for gummies.
Well, in the past 2 years or so, I started doing the keto thing and lost about 80 pounds.
You lost 80 pounds?
Yeah, before we met, I was almost 300 pounds.
Are you freaking kidding me?
Yeah.
I don't see that in you.
Oh, it's great. There's cool. Like sometimes I pull up pictures from when I was at StarCast and meeting wrestlers and stuff. Like I was wearing double X shirts, but you'd swear they were smalls, just how tight they were on me.
No shit.
Yeah.
And you're not a really tall dude.
No, 5'9", 5'10", somewhere around there.
That's the same as me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was like,
what a tag team we could have made back then.
Oh, we. Yeah. Wow. Let's see.
Surprising.
As we get back to Jim Cornette, because he was having a lot of fun here, but he was really putting over Smoky Mountain, and you were putting it over big time too.
Yeah.
I liked his Bobby Eaton story where he was making some appearances on WCW, and in Smoky Mountain they were like threatening to exile him to WCW like it was a punishment.
Mm-hmm.
And in the story, Jim's trying to keep him at Smoky, but the other guy's trying to exile him, and they made the agreement that he can't leave until he loses his TV title. So I just thought it was neat they were working with WCW there, because we see them work with WWE later on.
Mm-hmm.
You do get Jim to talk a little bit about Bill Watts leaving and how he thinks wrestling has to get itself right to regain viewership and faith in the product. And even if they got good tomorrow, that they have more work to do. But you ask him about the return, the rumored return of Jim Crockett, and then you also talk to him about Jim Ross showing up in WWF, and I have that clip right here.
All right, let's go to it.
There's one rumor that's been really very hot over the last several months, and that is the reemergence or the re-entry into professional wrestling of Jim Cornette. Not Jim Cornette, Jim Crockett, I'm sorry.
Well, I didn't know I'd gone away that long.
Yeah, I know. But Crockett is, there's a lot of rumors out there about him breaking back in. What do you think would happen? Do you think that's a good deal that Crockett is thinking of getting back in?
Yeah, I think it would be excellent because, some people had their differences with Jimmy Crockett at the time that he sold to TBS, and but I think now there's been so many other more horrible people and horrible things involved in this profession that Jimmy Crockett would be a white knight in shining armor at this point. I think it would be excellent because here's a guy who knows how to run a wrestling promotion, who did it successfully for a long period of time until just a few things happened that caused it to be unsuccessful the last year that it was in operation, but it was in operation for 50 years before that. I think it would be excellent to get some more people back in the business that know how to run a promotion, know how to present wrestling, and know what talent looks like, and I think that would be the best for all concerned.
Yeah, so Crockett, that would open a lot of eyes also if Crockett reemerges into this business. I want to ask you one other question about a recent departure from WCW, kind of along the same lines right after Watts left, Jim Ross, who is now with the WWF. Do you think that's a good matchup?
I don't think it's the optimum matchup, but I think it was the last viable alternative remaining because you've got Jim Ross, who is one of the, in my opinion, the premier announcers in professional wrestling, and he's got his detractors too, but nobody can call a match like Jim. Now, I have my personal favorites, and, good old Bob Caudle, who hosts our program, and Lance Russell, who's one of my childhood idols. And as commentators for our particular part of the country, they can't be matched, and I don't think that Jim would be as popular in our particular area as guys like Lance and Bob. But on a national basis, for people who can just sit down and call a wrestling match, Jim is just fantastic. And once again, just another example of one of the best in the business that in a particular field that WCW has lost, and unfortunately the WWF's the only place for Jim to go to showcase his talent on a national basis. Yeah,
and that was a real surprise when they took over when Vince McMahon appeared on his radio show in WSB. I'm sure that opened a lot of eyes down in Atlanta. But Ross with the WWF now, and I guess as they say, only time will tell.
And he had a long and storied career there.
He did all right. The matchup worked out all right.
It did. Yeah, a lot of years. And here's a guy that still is out there doing it all these years later, man. You got to tip your hat to the cowboy, that's for sure.
Yeah, I do think it's really interesting, though, to hear this time frame, because here's a time frame where business is overall kind of down, but you guys also think it's because the products are bad. So it's interesting to hear someone go from one product that you don't think is good to another product that you don't think is good, and then have a discussion on which is the bad product he fits best with. You know what I mean?
Right. But because he had such a high national profile, I mean, that was the only place for him to go. Obviously, after from WCW, I mean, that was just the logical and only place to make good money. But yeah, the industry was kind of changing with the emergence of Smoky Mountain, and Jim did a fabulous job with that promotion. And then when ECW emerged, that really changed the game. That really opened eyes, and that kind of was the beginning of what became the Attitude Era. But if it wasn't for those two startups, if it wasn't for Smoky Mountain with Jim Cornette leading the way, and ECW, once Paul Heyman took the book from Eddie Gilbert and started doing those remarkable things there, that was kind of a turning point in the history of wrestling.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think it's neat. I think it's cool. Because also, growing up when I did, you think Jim Ross, WWF, like that's just it. Like, you go, oh, yeah, I guess he was in WCW. You find old trading cards, you're like, oh, look, he had a little time over there. And you just think of it as like a blip. And so it's really cool to listen back on these and hear that, like, it was a big deal when he moved over, and people weren't sure if it was going to work out.
It was a big deal. I was unsure about it personally. I mean, I just didn't think he would be a fit there because of the difference in the product presentations.
Yeah, which is also interesting. You have two completely different presentations that, by and large, the critics are down on both sides. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's just neat. It was neat. Because right now you see tribalism in a different way where people think that their product is perfect in every way, and the other one says, well, ours is perfect in every way. And it's just an argument of who's more perfect to themselves, right? Where that was almost all like, look, this one is really bad, but it fits better than this one that we think is pretty bad. Like, you know what I mean? It's just a neat flip.
Yeah, I like that word tribalism, because that's exactly what we're experiencing in today's presentation between the two big companies.
Yeah. And I know that I am such a shill for what I like, but I'm also fully aware of my bias, and I am open enough about that to know that I might not like this thing because of my bias, where some people don't seem to be aware of their bias. And that's
right. That's the day and age we live.
Yeah. You did put up an ad read here for a show that was coming through that was going to benefit the Eastern Suffolk Girls Softball Club. I thought it was notable because you had announced that Medusa was going to be there. Medusa Michelli was going to be there, escorting Greg the Hammer Valentine. And then you really went on for almost a couple sentences about Tasmaniac. Tasmaniac is going to be here. If you guys haven't seen Tasmaniac, you got to see him. He's got a bright, bright future in his business. Don't miss the Tasmaniac. See him while you can, kind of a deal. Whatever became of him.
A little prophetic. Well, a little. He knew what he wanted right from the beginning. When I first met him, he was Kid Crush at the time. When I managed Broadway Sunny Blaze at an independent show, and he was one of those guys that, even just starting out, when I first met him when he was with the Savoldi group, he didn't want to do jobs. He had a direction. He was already kind of becoming a suplex machine, and he was short and stout and very serious about his profession and what he wanted to do with it, and his evolution from the Kid Crush with the orange paint on his face, and then the Tasmaniac with that gimmick outfit that he wore. And but once Paul E got a hold of him, Paulie really, really knew what to do with him.
Yeah. Man, just think, if he had lost his first match, he'd be nowhere.
I'm sure that he was professional enough to get his license in New York, and there were never any issues there.
Just a hunch. Brings us to the callers. First caller, very exciting. That's the only caller I pulled from this episode.
Yeah.
We got ourselves Joey from Babylon.
All right, Joey.
We're going to go to the phones now, 661-1440. Our first caller for today is Joey from Babylon.
Hey, how you doing, John?
Hey, Joey.
How's everything?
What's going on?
Hey, listen, it was good to hear Cornette, you know?
It's always good to talk to Jim.
I'd like to see him in the WWF or WCW, but I guess he's pretty entrenched in the Smoky Mountain.
Hey, he's got a successful promotion. He's not going to be doing anything with Smoky Mountain, I feel. He's got a real successful promotion building there.
Well, hey, listen, another question I have for you. I think one of the things that I like Bill Watts myself. I think one of the things that he did was wrong was that off-the-top rule. I think that was ridiculous. This is wrestling.
Yeah, he rescinded it, though, after it was an outcry of...
Yeah, but don't you understand? Since he rescinded it, it's wimpishly used. It's basically that you can't come off the rope with a knee. You know that, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's wrong. But it's wrestling. You can be able to come off the rope any way you want, you know?
I think you could come off the rope with a sledgehammer.
I didn't say that, but...
I did.
But I mean, you know, like I know... I mean, I honestly think that since they rescinded it, it's very wimpishly used.
Yeah.
And do you see that, too?
Yeah, I've noticed that.
Yeah, no, they don't go to the top rope, and if they do, it's wimpishly used. So, I mean, they should really... another thing I understand, you cannot throw the guy into the outside the ring post anymore.
Yeah, that was one of the rules they had put down, the WCW, and also the hitting of, let's say, slamming a guy into the ring guardrails.
You can't do that?
Yeah, I think maybe that's one of the reasons the commission stopped about this Wednesday. We're going to look into that and report on it tonight.
I mean, that used to be always one of the great things when Flair fought. He'd be outside, and remember, he would take over the outside of the ring as well as inside.
Yeah, that's right.
So, I mean, I think they're taking away from some of the excitement.
Well, we'll just try to see. Maybe there's a couple new promotions that'll be springing up that'll be giving you the stuff that you want to see.
You got it, man. Have a good day, John.
Take care, Joey.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Yeah, I got a little, making fun of him a little bit in the beginning.
It was so funny because you made fun of him and then you immediately pull back. You're like, I shouldn't be making fun of this guy. I love this guy.
Yeah, but I wanted to continue it. I would have loved to just do a whole interview with him, with me using his voice and him having his voice.
Yeah.
I wish I could find him. I'd love to bring him on. I mean, he was always entertaining.
He's amazing. Yeah. He's one I was thinking too. I was like, man, if anybody knows who Joey from Babylon is, please connect him to us.
Yeah.
I would love to talk to that guy. He's my favorite caller.
Yeah. Well, you haven't heard too much of George from Lindenhurst, though. Wait till we start starting all over again, and George from Lindenhurst begins to call every week. And he, to this day, for people who listen to this podcast when it first started and these old shows, he is the all-time number one favorite caller of fans who are fans of this program.
Did you ever find out why he dropped off?
George from Lindenhurst?
Yeah, why he stopped calling so much?
I did not. He just kind of disappeared. We did find him. I did find him. I mean, personally, he lives in Tennessee, actually. He lives towards the western part of Tennessee. And actually friends with him on Facebook.
Yeah. Well, yeah, if anybody knows Joey, let's get him. I like how you made him laugh there. I like how he keeps referring to it as wimpish.
Yeah, wimpish. Yeah. That was a little wimpish, Johnny. That was a little wimpish.
Yeah.
Hey, I am the dean of wrestling.
So good. His cackle too. Ah,
yeah.
Steve from West Hampstead called. Any updates on the court cases? You said the Jesse Ventura one was postponed, and he also mentions that he thought the WCW show was sponsored by WWF because it had commercials for WrestleMania. And then that Bret Hart was on Joe Pedicino's show, said that Hogan should have not accepted the belt. I thought that was interesting that Bret was out there doing shoot interviews.
Yeah, there were some wrong commercials that were running in program. There were WrestleMania spots or something running in a WCW program. You could buy commercial advertising.
Yeah.
Although when I did have they pulled my spots when I used to run convention ads on Monday Night Raw. Yeah, in the New York market. Spots were pulled.
Did you get your money back?
Oh, of course, but it was I wanted to advertise where the wrestling fans' eyeballs were going to be.
And they said no.
They didn't like me.
You did say there was going to be no bowling tonight, but you mentioned that they are going to be starting a celebrity bowling league to include soap opera stars from All My Children.
Yeah. I wonder how long that lasted.
Well, yeah, couldn't have been too long.
If it even started, I don't know.
I was wondering, is that the woman who we saw on the Sunny Blaze episode who was the ring announcer? She said she was in soap operas.
Oh, that young girl who passed away. Yeah, she was. I don't know if she was on All My Children or One Life to Live, one of those shows. But I don't know. I don't have too much of a recollection on what happened at the bowling alley, other than they were trying everything to bring people there.
Just made me wonder. When I heard that, I thought I thought that would be an easy connection if you were friends with this person already and got them to come out. You do mention there's a convention coming up in about a month, putting on by Dr. Mike Lano. That's going to be the roast of Mushnick.
Yeah, that was an ugly situation.
You said that Mike has been asking you to plug it, so finally you're going to plug it, and that he invited you, but you cannot make it due to others
not wanting to go.
I think you just didn't want to go.
Well, there's no doubt I didn't want to go. I didn't want to go.
What well yeah, no, because the next thing comes up is there's a Mushnick thing later on with Lanny, but this is the one that didn't show up this convention, right? Never happened.
There's a lot of speculation and stories about it, and I don't remember specifically, but all I know is a clusterfuck. Whatever happened, there was something horribly, horribly wrong with it.
I thought it was neat.
There are people who know, probably even listening to this podcast right now. So if anybody knows, if you want to share the story, or if Dr. Mike ever wants to come on the show, we could certainly go over that with him. Just send an email to john@mattmemories.com, and we'll make sure that we can make that happen.
That'd be amazing. Bill Herring from Long Beach. He said he was at Paramount.
Bill Herring. It's another name from the past. Yeah.
Do you know? Do you remember?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
What do you do?
Just one of the fans, super fans of the show. Booster Club member, all of that. So.
On the bus trips and stuff?
Perhaps.
Yeah. He said he was at the Paramount, and it was the usual WCW garbage. And Rick Rude had a spot where his pants were pulled down. And he goes, I think you might be an exhibitionist. Because there's a lot of gyrating. He was in no hurry.
Yeah, I think that was against Cactus, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, yeah. And some lady in the front row exposed herself. And he goes, yeah, I bet Sting didn't mind. You're like, be that. You're like, all right. So, you're like, all right, Billy, gotta go.
I think I do remember that.
Yeah.
The flashing of the boobage.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's kind of how you ended that one. You caught him up at the end, and he was talking about Rick Rude and the lady and Sting, and you kind of wrapped it up right after that. So it does bring us to Pro Wrestling Spotlight.
On to bigger and better things.
Yeah. The WCW debut and Paramount you talk about in your open, that you're going to have a ref come out, that Lonnie's coming out, and that you had just heard rumor that morning on a phone call or that afternoon that 2 high-level executives are no longer with the WWF. You won't be mentioning any names, but you're trying to confirm it, and if you can confirm it while you're on the air, then you'll talk about it. You're not able to confirm it on the air, so we'll see if it comes up again later. But
or next week.
Yeah.
I don't know.
After the libel capsule, or right before it really, Don said that he read in USA Today that there was a report that was brought to his attention by somebody else who saw the USA Today that Iron Sheik, Lanny Poffo, and Hercules supposedly tested positive for HIV. And you said that was not something you had heard of. And Don's like, well, if you're going to have Lanny on, it might be worth asking about if it was in USA Today. And you're like, yeah, I guess I'll ask him. And you do end up asking him.
No. Yeah, must have been a comfortable moment.
I think it was actually handled really well by both of you. You could tell you definitely did not want to ask him.
Yeah.
And he definitely handled it very well. And he's all like, well, if anyone would know, it'd be me. And
yeah,
I don't. So he even goes on to, because he talks about all the testing that they do in WWE. He goes, they test for everything there. He goes, they test for marijuana, they test for drugs, they test for this. He goes, they test for AIDS. He goes, it's part of the blood test that you get back. And he's like, I almost didn't want to see it half the time because you just never know what's going to catch up with you. And he goes, me more than anybody that's even listening right now probably knows that I'm not more than anybody. Like, I've been tested so many times.
Right.
But yeah, he didn't get like mad or anything. But
bizarre report, that's for sure.
Really weird that USA Today would get it.
Yeah.
And then it not be remote. After the capsule, though, you go over the Paramount card. I have that.
Okay.
Okay, we are back. It's that little Doink the Clown music I like so much. Almost like Doink the Clown music. But anyway, very, very frustrated this week after attending the WCW show at the Paramount. Now, how can a company screw up more than WCW did this past Wednesday night? First of all, last Saturday night on the they do a show on WCBS TV, Channel 2 here in New York at 12:30 every Saturday night. The show is not even plugged on Channel 2. Not even talked about, not even plugged. The show was poorly booked from top to bottom, in my opinion. It was just a very frustrating situation. Now, WCW, it was a good walk-up crowd. They had about 1,800 advance coming into the week. They managed to have 3,500 people in the place, which should have been more, but I am not the people who run WCW. I am not the promoters. I am not the matchmaker. I'm not the event coordinator. And I really feel this company could have made a big splash here in the New York area. My opinion, they did not. There were 3,500 hardcore wrestling fans there thirsty for wrestling action. They were into this show before this show started, and they were, in my opinion, sold a bill of goods. We're going to talk about the card. Let me just give you the results real fast, and then I'm going to bring on a guest. In the opening contest, Johnny B. Bad, who went out of his way, and he always goes out of his way to do as much pre-publicity as possible. He came in town a few days early. Ironically, he did visit a few hospitals here, which could have been publicized if press releases were sent properly. We didn't get a press release here until the day Johnny B. Bad was in town, which was Monday. So that, in my opinion, was a big screw-up. Then they make an announcement after Johnny B. Bad pins Shanghai Pierce in the opening encounter. Max Payne took on Steve Regal, who was substituting for Shane Douglas in the second match, defeated him with a submission arm bar. Before that match even got into the ring, they made the announcement that Flair wasn't going to be there, and the fans immediately started chanting, "We want Flair." Then what happened in the third match, you would have to be there to believe. Chris Benoit, one of the most exciting wrestlers in this business, took on Ron Simmons. Now, this was the first match on this card where the fans got into it totally. They were excited. They were at the edge of their seats. The match, after 3 minutes, all of a sudden, a referee by the name of Nick Patrick ran into the ring and stopped the match. There was another referee officiating, Henry Terranova, from the Athletic Commission, who we're going to bring on in a second to talk about this situation. A lot of stories have been circulating on why that match was stopped, and hopefully we'll get the real inside story tonight. Van Hammer defeated Vinny Vegas with a cradle. The World Tag Team Champions Brian Pillman and Steve Austin successfully defended their tag team titles against Too Cold Scorpio, who had a bad night, in my opinion, and Marcus Bagwell. Bagwell was pinned by Austin. Then the man that a lot of the fans came out to see, Cactus Jack, who got a tremendous ovation coming in. And just the fact that Cactus was competing after the beating he took, which aired today on television from Van Vader, that was a profile in courage. Then they have him against Rick Rude, and Rude gets the pinfall victory, 1-2-3 in the middle of the ring, which really pissed the fans off as well. U.S. title match then took place. Dustin Rhodes and Paul Orndorff, a DQ there, victory for Rhodes as Rick Rude interfered. Barry Windham pinned Ricky Steamboat to retain the NWA World title match. By this time, I'd already got up and left. I couldn't take anymore. After Cactus's loss, I split. Couldn't handle it. In the main event, Big Van Vader defeated Sting to retain his WCW World title match. Now, here's a company, I don't know if they got a suicide wish or what, but trying to get into New York for so many years, and didn't make anything special out of it. It was just another show on the road.
Yeah, my disappointment was evident talking about it, my anger, and wasn't a good show, wasn't a good presentation. And also interesting that Vinny Vegas lost to Van Hammer, which, Kevin Nash.
Yeah. I mean, when I was looking at the results of the thing, a lot of it seemed weird to begin with, but I don't want to say there wasn't a lot of star power, but outside of the real main events,
Yeah.
There wasn't a bunch of names that you really feel like was the top.
And it's a house show. It's a house show. Give Cactus the victory, especially because the fans loved him so much, and he's from the area. Why make the guy lose? Why not make the fans happy? I'm getting angry 30 years later.
Yeah, you said that's when you walked out. I don't know if you said it here or at another spot.
Yeah, I just said it. I said it. I mean, I left after the Cactus match after he lost 1, 2, 3. That was it. I was like, I'm out of here.
Yeah, like, fuck this. Cactus can't get a win in New York, then what are we doing? But yeah, you were really, really unhappy on this one, and I don't know. I don't know what their thought was to go in there and just flub it that bad. And yeah, did they come back? Do you remember them coming back at all?
No, I don't think they did come back. I think they were done. At least in the New York City market. Yeah, they might have went back to the Meadowlands, and I don't know if they went back to Nassau Coliseum or not, which were really the only places to go. But they didn't have the audience or the fan following to even consider filling up a Nassau Coliseum even halfway.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you think about it. We had Bischoff on just a couple of weeks ago. You talked to him then, 30 years ago then, about wanting WCW to come to New York, and he talked about how important the New York market was and how he really wanted to get in there and how it was really difficult. So for them to actually do it and then for them to just seemingly not care about it and walk away from it, like... And the fact that Johnny B. Bad was doing all the charity and they didn't talk about it till it was already happened.
Yeah. It was not done. And they, of course, the Saturday before the event, not mentioning it on their New York-based TV show. Wow.
Just no effort.
No. Or just inept management.
I think it's like I was saying before. I think that there was part of them that just felt like they were, God's gift. And that they were going to walk in there and people were just going to just flock to them without ever hearing they were showing up. That it was going to be just a
no-brainer. It's going to be a big night for us. But it wasn't.
No. Just ridiculous. You being very upset about the Benoit Ron Simmons match. You have Henry Terranova come on. And I have the beginning of that where you really break down what happened here. Because as you said before, you'd heard a rumor that the New York State Athletic Commission shut it down. And you
asked Henry, went right to the source.
I want to bring on Henry Terranova now. Henry is a licensed referee for the New York State Athletic Commission who was assigned to the WCW show this past Wednesday night at the Paramount. Let's bring Henry on now. Henry, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, John.
How are you doing, sir?
All right, pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. First opportunity that we've had to bring you on this particular program, and you were involved in a very, very controversial match this past Wednesday night at the Paramount. Chris Benoit
and Ron Simmons.
You were assigned this particular match.
That's correct.
And to be honest with you, you were there. I think you worked the first match as well.
I worked Johnny B. Bad and Shanghai PSO, so yeah.
This match, Benoit and Simmons had the fans up and out of their seats from the moment they got out of the dressing room.
That's correct. They, when the combatants got in the ring, before the bell even rang, they went at it immediately. And within seconds, the match was taken outside the ring. And they were going at it pretty good. Pretty good. As a matter of fact, it was the first time during the evening that the crowd really got into it. And they were totally behind the action. The match itself hadn't started yet. So I was trying to get them both back in the ring to make it official and ring the bell. It hadn't started yet, and it was just so exciting. And at that point, we had a referee with the WCW come out from backstage. He came over to me and informed me that the match should be over, should be terminated. I looked at him and I asked why. It hadn't even started yet. It's against WCW rules to use chairs because while they were out, Benoit picked up a couple chairs and hammered Simmons a couple times pretty good, and Simmons gave it back to him. So he said it had to be terminated. It was against WCW rules, and it was the decision of the WCW.
Yeah. Well, there were rumors. This is as you know, this is an inside show, an insider show, and that I assume when the match was going out there, this is not the way this match was supposed to finish.
Well, this was really lined up to be a great match. Chris is a very popular wrestler, and as you know, Ron is a former world champion.
Right.
So it really was lined up to be a very, very exciting match, and it didn't disappoint the first couple of minutes. It's a shame they weren't able to take it in the ring and continue what they and settle the score. But this was a decision made solely by the WCW, and I can't say I agree with the decision, but it was what they made, and it was their show, and they can do what they want.
Yeah, the rumors that have been circulating, there was I don't know if it's going to be a published report now, but there was one journalist that was told that it was a New York State Athletic Commission ruling that the New York State Athletic Commission had forced the termination or the sudden stoppage of this match.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. First of all, if it had been a ruling, and Randy Gordon was backstage there, and so was Commissioner Herring, had it been one of their rulings, they wouldn't have sent the WCW referee down to the ring to let me know. There was another New York State Athletic Commission referee. They either would have sent him down to let me know, or one of our officials, either Commissioner Herring or Randy Gordon, probably Commissioner Herring, would have come down and told me to terminate the match. This was the ruling of the WCW, period.
So it had nothing to do with the Athletic Commission. It was a WCW ruling, and I know the reason they gave is that the match was too much action outside the ring, and the guardrails being used. But then again, tonight they showed a match with Cactus Jack and Van Vader, which was probably the most brutal match that has been on TV in a long time, in several years. And the guardrails were all knocked down, and Van Vader was picking the guardrails up and throwing them against the ring after he was counted out tonight on television. So it just didn't make sense, and it just seemed like after that point, the fans were just chanting for refunds the remainder of the evening, and that really, after the Flair announcement that he was going to be there, and then when this happened, that ruined the night for many of the fans in attendance. It
seemed to take the wind out of their sails, John. Like I said, the first two matches, the first one with Johnny B. Bad, who's always a good show,
yeah,
went over fairly well. The second one was so-so, but this one actually had the potential to completely put them in the mood for the rest of the evening.
Oh yeah,
and it had gotten to that point, and it seemed like almost while it was at its highest point, they pulled the plug on it, and the rest of the evening it was almost anticlimactic.
Wow. Very interesting comments from Henry, and Henry's a straight shooter, so it was WCW's call. I totally believe that 30 years later. They just screwed it up.
And like you said, what's the point? It's not even a televised match.
No, it was a house show, and you're trying to impress the audience that's there to make them want to come see you again.
Yes.
Wow, I mean, it's really bizarre, even talking about this show 30 years later, on how much of a misstep that they did, and for Nick Patrick to come out and say it's all against WCW rules, and that same night airing that Vader Cactus brutality. Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, the one that he walked away with 24 stitches from and all that.
Yeah.
We hear they used a couple of chairs, and it's all okay. That's enough. It's
against the rules.
It's just crazy. Because it sounds like, I don't know how long the first two matches are, but I can't imagine they were Broadway's. So I got to imagine this is all within 30 minutes of the show starting.
Yeah.
That everyone's just all what are we watching?
Why are they doing this? Rip off, refunds.
Yeah, I do like this. You had mentioned that when people are paying as much as $25 for ringside seats, you expect a certain amount of action, and you have to come through. I just love the idea that ringside seats are $25.
Yeah.
And you're talking about it like it was thousands.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that was probably more than most people were spending, right?
Yeah, that was those were high prices back then.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the reality. Those were high ticket prices. $25 was a pretty hefty ticket.
Yeah. So, yeah, and then you'd also mention that it is WCW, and their whole past traditions were based on a brawling style. That's
true.
Where they come from.
That's true.
So, I'll tell you, Henry didn't make you less upset.
No, he did not.
But I thought that was really cool. I mean, not enough refs, I think, in general, are interviewed in in the industry at all.
Yeah, that is true.
There's only like 2 refs I know that have books. That'd be James Beard and Jimmy Cornette.
Yeah.
His book. I've asked a few of the other refs if they would write books, and they're like, "Nah." It's like, come on.
Well, what about you? What about you, Ref Marsh? Why don't you write one?
No one wants to know about my 5 local shows.
I want to hear about that weight loss, though.
Oh yeah, we'll do that. I'll do one like how Nick Aldis wrote a wrestling book, but it turned out to be a weight loss book. That's what I'll do.
There you go. Best seller.
But yeah, so I thought it was cool that you had him on. Like, not enough people get that insight. You know?
Hey, I tried to, do whatever I can to answer the questions and bring on people that maybe you've not heard from before. I was always trying to entertain that audience, especially on that nighttime show, which was a massive audience at the time.
Yeah. You do get Lanny Poffo on. You ask him what he's been up to since leaving WWF. This interview is so good. It does start off so weirdly vague. Because he says, I've been very busy. It's been very profitable. I miss the fun and excitement of the WWF. I would always go back. And you're like, so what's going on with the WAW, the World Alliance Wrestling? You're like, who all is involved in this? And he goes, I'm not going to be very helpful to you. He avoids answering that question. He says, and then he says it's in its infancy. And then he's a genius. And sometimes when I listen to this interview, I thought maybe he knows too much for his own good, because he starts to really get into like specifics about the literal term of infancy and the differences between fetuses and children. And he's trying to like pinpoint the moment of conception of WAW and stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm just going like, this is weird.
Yeah, he was giving us a biology lesson too.
Yes. But he does get to start talking about Andre the Giant. And you ask him about a poem he wrote for Andre. And he tells a little story about Andre. And I clipped that. And then we have a bunch of the callers because while he was really roundabout about WAW, he still handled a lot of this stuff really well. So this is Lanny's Andre thing.
I used to be in binomial nomenclature. One of the fascinating things in wrestling is Andre was an actual giant and I was a real genius. God keep his soul. I've got a beautiful Andre the Giant poem, one of my most proudest poems in the book. I really loved him, and I really felt terrible when he passed away.
Can you? Do you have it in your? I'm sure you have it in your.
I don't have it in front of me.
Oh, you don't.
And let's see.
I should have brought my book because I got a copy of your book.
Fortunately, I am a genius. I haven't thought of this in about 5 years, but in this world of wrestling giants, one man puts them all to shame, and he's every bit as rugged as the Alps from where he came. The French-born Andre Roussimoff's no stranger to our shore, but we call him Andre the Giant because he's every inch and more. And it just goes on and on superfluously. And,
it was a tremendous loss for the wrestling business.
I'll tell you what, it was a great loss for humanity because he was a wonderful person. He was a big-hearted guy. He was very nice to me when I met him in 1974. And toward the end, I could see in his face, the last 5 years, that he was in great pain. He seemed to have he kept shrinking as the years go by. He's all bent over. He was starting to become swayback like a horse.
Mm-hmm.
And I hated to see it because he was, a lot of people don't realize, and they don't give him credit, but in his day, he was one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. And he would have probably been a main event wrestler if he was 6 feet tall.
He was good, especially in those early years as well. I recall him doing drop kicks when I first started seeing Andre compete. There were matches where he actually did standing drop kicks, which I found phenomenal for a man of his size back then.
That's right. I'll never forget in Pontiac, Michigan, when the great Hulk Hogan body slammed Andre the Giant. And that was like, I thought the ring was going to just sink down to China.
Yeah.
That sure was a moment.
Yes, it certainly was.
Yes.
The Genius. Always a fascinating interview with him, and what a really cool guy he was. I really miss the guy. I mean, what a loss. What a loss him not being here anymore. Great interview. I'm sure you got a little bit more there, but if you want to hear the entire thing, just go to patreon.com/John Arezzi. There's just so much there for you to enjoy, including all these complete shows that are in their entirety.
Yeah, there is more of the interview. I also just love that you mentioned what a great loss to the industry, and he almost like corrects you with the great loss to humanity and talks about how good of a person Andre was to him, people he was around. So I just thought it was nice, man. And yeah, he's very eloquent. And you do ask him about the USA Today article. You also ask him straight up if he's heard about the executives you heard about. And he goes, no, but I want to know who you heard. And you're like, oh, I'm not going to say anything on the air. And he goes, well, you're about to go to a commercial break, right? You could surely tell me while you're on an ad break.
Got him going.
Yeah. And you're like, I'll have Bruce tell you while we're doing the ads. And he goes, oh, okay, cool. One of the ads was for Rob Feinstein's tapes. And you mentioned that he has the Von Erichs tribute show. And I thought that was interesting because I remember before when they did the show, you had the guy on talking about it. And he said that they were clearly recording it, but he had no idea why. And so you didn't know if there were going to be tapes or anything. So it's interesting that the tapes.
Rob had every show.
Yeah.
He would just release them. He didn't care about copyright infringement or.
Yeah.
I mean, he just released it, and I took the advertising dollar, so I'm as guilty as him. And he's still in business. I mean, he's still, his company does really, really well.
Yeah, he still exists and does a lot of stuff with collectibles still. So
yeah. And he'll be at that 80s Wrestling Con show.
Really? Wow.
He'll be there. Yeah. He usually brings what was that girl from Francine from ECW? He usually brings her tagging along.
That's cool. You talk about how you have the Best of Cactus Jack versus Eddie Gilbert special tape that you put together.
Yeah.
And then I have a few clips here of Lanny talking to the callers because I was having such a hard time with this part of the interview because he was so good to your callers.
Yeah.
And I thought it was so neat because for whatever reason, the first like 3, I think, the 4 maybe, you have a chunk of like young callers. Like they're clearly kids.
Hey, you know what I noticed too over the last several weeks?
Huh.
There's no Brian from Long Beach.
I was noticing that too. Even Brian.
Isn't that something? After when he said that Jim Hacksaw Duggan had AIDS or HIV or something.
No. He was asking. He asked a question before that, but you hung up on him. You hung up on him like twice in a row.
Yeah, because he had inappropriate things that he said there was about an affair that somebody had.
Yep, the affair you cut him off on, and then there was one. I forget who you. I think it was when you had Hellwig on, when you had Warrior on. He said he had 2 questions. He asked one, and you hung up.
Yeah, interesting. That might have been it.
Yeah, he might have upset him and
he might have just went down to Vicious Vincent's World of Wrestling and just exclusively called Vicious Vincent before booking.
Maybe that's why he liked Vince so much.
Yeah, well, he booked him at his bar mitzvah. I mean, what the heck? He must have really liked him, but not today.
Yeah. So I actually, this first clip is the first 3 callers because it's still only like 5 minutes. You kind of go through the callers pretty quick, but the way he's talking and handling these young callers, I thought was so cool. So we got Phil from Rosaline Heights, James from Queens, and Lisa from Clementine.
Bring on the kids.
Lanny, you there?
Yeah.
Hope I didn't put you to sleep.
Oh, no, I'm fine.
And we're going to start taking calls now. We'll go to line number 1. The first caller for tonight will be Phil from Rosaline Heights. Phil, you're first tonight.
Hello, John.
Hi.
First, I would just like to say, Lenny, I'm one of your favorite fans, so, I don't hate you, and,
He don't hate you, Lanny.
That's great. That's reassuring.
And I just have a couple of questions for you. One, is there any chance that you will come back into the WWF, or are you going to just...
There's always a possibility of that. And it's just, well, how old are you?
14.
All right. How's your grades?
They're all right.
Okay, well, that's terrific. What grade are you in?
8th.
All right, fantastic. You like sports?
Yeah, I do.
Well, thank you for the wonderful things you said about me. And where are you from?
Roslyn Heights, New York, on the island.
Okay, fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah, there's always a possibility I'll come back in the World Wrestling Federation. I've been there 7 years, and this is just it's been a fantastic break for me. My daughter is going to be 9 years old, and we've really had a lot of quality and quantity time together now. And I've been married since '83, so I think this has been a good vacation, and you never know. You might just turn on your TV set. I might be back on one day.
You don't know what the future holds. Thanks for your call, Phil. Let's go to James from Queens. James, you're next.
Hello. I'm on the line with my cousin, and we have a couple of questions for you. My first question is, Lanny, do you know who the Blue Blazer was?
Yes, I do.
Who was he?
Can you keep a secret?
Sure.
So can I.
That's no fair.
Okay, I'll tell you what. I'll
tell him, Lanny. Everybody knows who it was, except for this youngster.
Okay, I believe the blue. Let's put it this way: who's the only guy that can flip like that? I'll give you a hint. His brother is a former WWF World Champion.
Oh, so the rumors I heard were right. It is Owen Hart.
There you go. That's
wait a minute. I never.
He didn't say it. Wink. He didn't say it.
I
never said it. I never said it. I just gave him the wink. All right?
Oh, no, I didn't hear it from you. Of course not.
I just
okay, and now my
deduced
cousin
it
has some
by the
questions.
clues.
All right, bring your cousin on quickly.
Hello?
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 Yeah, you're on the air. Go ahead. Say your question.
First do you know how come Hulk Hogan might be stripped of the belt?
I'm sorry, John. Can you translate that?
I guess she was wondering if why Hulk Hogan is not being stripped of the belt. So that answers the question. Hulk is the ruling came down and he's allowed to hold the belt, and he will be defending it forthcoming for the WWF. Let's go to Lisa from Clementon, New Jersey. Lisa, you're next.
Yes. I was wondering if Sid Vicious was coming back in the WCW, and if so, if he was going to be part of the Horsemen, and also. How did, if you know how Kerry Von Erich died?
Kerry unfortunately committed suicide. Very, very tragic situation there. And the other question about Sid, he is negotiating with WCW. But, Lanny, do you know Sid at all?
Yes.
He's a big softball enthusiast, so softball season is here again.
Right, he's probably going to play softball.
There you go.
Actually, the only thing I heard about Sid Vicious is that I think on May 8th in St. Louis they're going to have they're going to honor Sam Mushnick. And I believe that Sid has volunteered his services to go wrestle there.
May the 8th?
That's what I heard. May the 8th. Is that true?
Yeah, there's a convention. Dr. Mike Lano, the wrestling dentist. Do you know the good doctor?
Yes, I do very well. As a matter of fact, he's one of the reasons that my smile's so pretty.
Has he worked on your teeth, really?
Yes.
Dr. Mike, let me just give you out his number because he has a convention, the Sam Muchnick Roast and Convention, May 7th through the 9th, St. Louis Airport, Henry the 8th Lodge. Call Dr. Mike if you're interested in attending at 510-865-6744. Are you going to be at that show? At that convention, rather?
No, I'm going to be in England.
Oh, okay.
I got a new book coming out, and I'm going to be on all the talk shows.
Uh-huh.
And I'm going to be spreading myself pretty thin out there, but I'll tell you what, I love Sam Muchnick, and I'd like to do a little poem for him at this time.
Go right ahead.
Wrestling promoters, more often than not, retire without any friends, but St. Louis still honors Sam Muchnick, and nobody condescends. For all of the years he's been giving his best, promoting the chase and the keel, we pay back Sam Muchnick with love and respect, and that's the way all of us feel.
Hear, hear. Sam Muchnick, a true legend in the business.
First question. What are these kids doing up so late?
And they're all the ones calling.
I know. It's like that rapid fire, 4 kids in a row.
Yeah.
And the first caller, I guess Phil was his name.
Yeah.
Sounded like a young Joey from North Babylon.
That was my first thought. I was like, is that
really?
Joey's little brother or something?
Could have been. Maybe his son.
From Roslyn Heights, though.
Yeah, his mother might have gotten custody. Might have been a horrific marriage.
Sounded like a young Joey. Although,
call that John Arezzi up. Okay,
yeah.
Pops.
He said, I'm one of your favorite fans. I don't hate you because earlier Lanny says, I love all the fans, whether they love me or hate me. Because it doesn't matter to me. I love you anyways. And so that's why he's like, I don't hate you. Okay.
Did you get a sense that I was kind of getting a little annoyed with the children?
For sure. that cousin. Hey, hello.
But I love them now, listening back from 30 years ago. But when I was on the air, I was like, oh, another kid. You know.
I know it added so much flavor because, I mean, it was just cool. You were like their cool uncle in a way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Uncle Johnny.
And then, Uncle Johnny with all the inside information. He knows. He'll know. You know, who's the blue blazer? Like that. Everyone knows, but this youngster.
Oh, that's good stuff.
You're almost like spit it out. With the wind.
Yeah. And of course, Lanny's, teasing.
Yeah, he's so patient with him, and he's trying to have a good time.
Very nice. That's the way you
them.
should be with. That's the way you should be with kids, not like me. Look at these freaking kids. Get these freaking kids off of here.
Freaking guy, this kid, get him out of here.
$1,000 an hour for this freaking show.
Yeah, like that. He goes, "Oh, so it was Owen Hart," and he goes, "I never said that. You deduced it from the clues." It's fantastic. Andrew from Brooklyn, he says, will Spivey join the Four Horsemen? And he did have a thought. He goes, if Benoit loses a few more times in WCW, do you think he's going to go to WWF and team with Owen? He goes, I know they know each other because Benoit trained in the dungeon. That's what the kid said. That would have been a good tag team.
It would have been.
Freddie from Brooklyn asked about Lex Luger's steel-plated arm gimmick that they were going through, where he was knocking people out with a forearm and said he had a steel plate in there. And he was asking if it was from the accident. And you're like, I don't know. That's a good angle they might go with it, but he did not broach how he got the steel plate at the time. And that brings us to this next one. It's Staten Island. Well, it's Scott from Staten Island. And he asks Lanny about playing baseball, which I thought was cool because it goes into a really cool Randy Savage story.
Yep.
Let's go to Staten Island. And Scott, you're next.
Hi, Lanny. I have a question. I know your brother played baseball. Did you play baseball?
In high school.
In high school.
And that's his, my last year was 73. My brother was signed in 1971 as a free agent with the St. Louis Cardinals, and he continued for 4 years.
Did he make it up to AAA level?
No, he made it as far as A level, but he led the Florida State League in home runs and RBIs 1 year, and he's the type of guy he would never blame injury on any of his shortcomings, but he actually had a separated shoulder which hurt his arm, and he had enough tenacity to try to learn to throw left-handed, and unfortunately, they just didn't go for that. But I have to say that. He sure did give it everything he had, and I'd never seen a man, major leagues or hit a ball as far as he could because, he's got tremendous tendon strength and he had great technique and he's very coordinated in every sport he ever chose. So anyway, he's traded his field of dreams for his ring of screams, and baseball's loss is wrestling's gain.
I have to agree with that. Randy, of course, one of the top performers in the business and has been for many, many years, and still a mainstay in the World Wrestling Federation, doing a lot of charity work and publicity work for the WWF now. Not wrestling as much as he did, but the fans love him nonetheless. How's your relationship with Randy?
Fantastic. There's just the two of us. We're the only brothers and no sisters. So, fantastic relationship. Yes.
I got to ask you a question, okay? And you can answer, or you don't have to. But there's been a lot of reports, a lot of rumors, speculation in the insider newsletters, etc., that he's got some heat with, or legitimate heat with Hulk Hogan. Do you know if that's the case or how their relationship is?
I don't know of any such heat.
Okay.
And if there is any, I hope it gets resolved. But as far as any heat like that, I have no idea. But I'm sure there's a lot of people that would like to see some heat between them. And perhaps that's where the rumors got started.
Okay. Let's go back to the phones.
I have no heat with either one of them.
Well, you've worked against Hogan, and you've been around WWF for a long time.
That's right. I'm very archaic.
Yes.
Good stuff from Lanny. Yeah, I mean, I think that could have been the only time. I think there was totally legitimate heat between Hogan and Savage. So, yeah, whatever he knew, he wasn't spilling the beans on the show. One thing I would have loved to have done is, I wish there was some videotape of Macho Man in baseball. I would have loved to see that.
Yeah, I can't imagine there's much of anything out there, right? He never made it to the majors, so that stuff wasn't televised.
I thought he made it higher than single A ball, which is kind of the first level. So he didn't, but it would have been fascinating to see that. I know there's some baseball cards of him out there.
Yeah, I was about to say I've seen like 1 or 2 baseball cards that float around a little bit, but yeah, it was really neat. The idea that he tried to learn how to throw with his left hand.
Yep. Yeah.
I also thought it was neat too, the idea that there's all this reported heat, and he was all like, well, there's probably a lot of people who want that to be true, so that might be where the reports come from. So you start hearing some of what we hear a lot nowadays, where a lot of these one-sided concepts are coming from very particular people. Like with Bruce on his podcast, sometimes one of the things they do is read a report, and they go, so who do you think was the one who said that? And he goes, well, from that perspective, it probably was this person. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. He'll never fully spill the beans either, that one.
There's no way, no. But I thought that was really cool. I thought it was neat. It was fun to hear Lanny tell that story. We have Adam from Hackensack as the last caller, last clip I have. He asked about how he started wrestling. And then he goes into a little bit about what he loves about wrestling. You ask him what his opinion is on Vince. And I thought it was kind of cool to hear him break it down the way that he did. And then he talks about you for a minute. So this is a little bit on the longer side. It's like 5 minutes.
Okay.
Almost 6.
We can handle it, Marsh.
I think we could do it. But I thought it was really neat. I love Lanny. This interview really endeared me to Lanny a lot.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the phones. I guess we're going to Hackensack, New Jersey. Okay, Adam from Hackensack, New Jersey. You're next.
Yes, Lanny Poffo. Mr. Lanny Poffo. How did you start wrestling?
I started wrestling freshman year in high school in the amateurs, and I had a very good high school athletic career. And then in 1973, upon graduation, I became a professional wrestler. And so this summer, June 8th, will mark 20 years in wrestling for Lanny Poffo. And one of the greatest things about wrestling not only has been very lucrative for me, but I've gotten to see almost all of the world, and mainly thanks to the World Wrestling Federation, because that's really, with all the international tours, that's what I love the most. And I was always into geography, and I never dreamed that I would actually get to visit the places that I studied.
So you've been all over, exactly. You've been all over the world traveling with the WWF, and they're under a lot of pressure right now. And you know Vince McMahon. You've known him for a long time. What's your feelings? What's your opinion on Vince?
Well, a lot of people ask me that, and it's really more people die of jealousy than heart attacks and cancer combined. And Vince McMahon, when he walks into a room, believe me, there's a man in the room. The same feeling I got when I met H. Wayne Huizinga, the president and chairman of the board of Blockbuster Video. The same feeling I got when I met W. Clement Stone, who also is like, he must be 100 years old by now.
Multi-millionaire.
He's the man of Combined International Insurance, Fortune 500 magazine. This is a phenomenal man, and I've seen him in situations where the ordinary man would just crack up. But he's got broad shoulders. He stands like he's 10 feet tall, and he's a very nice man. He's very congenial. I remember when he was on the Phil Donahue show, everybody lined up there to take their best shot. And
I was on that show too, you know.
I remember that. As a matter of fact, I had it taped, and I thought you did very well too.
I wasn't out there to bust a guy's chops.
No, and as a matter of fact, no, you did. That's why I said you did very well. You were out there to be honest and truthful, and you came across the same way.
It was a very tense atmosphere that day. It really was.
Well, anytime you're on Donahue, it's going to be tense, no matter what. You know, even if you're talking about. The fact of the matter is, there's a lot of pressure right now.
Yeah.
When has there not been pressure right now for Vince McMahon? You see,
he's under an enormous amount of pressure right now.
Why? More now than before?
Well, it's just it's just a situation where it's a lot of pressure in the company. You know, it's just everything that's gone over the last year. It's just it's a very volatile time for the company, and
when you become truly successful in life, you can assure yourself of two things: false friends and true enemies.
Yeah.
And Vince McMahon, unfortunately, is surrounded by mucho jealousy, and that's all it is. Now, I believe that cooler heads prevail, and he's the coolest head I know, so he will prevail, and all the jealousy will just eat holes through their livers.
Well, that's that's just something that everyone's watching right now. And I'll tell you one thing about Vince. I have met him a few times, and when he walks into a room, as you said, he does command attention, and he does dominate. When he walks into a room, he dominates it, and he is a genius. I'm not going to say he's not. The man is a marketing genius, and he's taken professional wrestling. And it made it explode worldwide. And one thing I always notice now, there's a lot of international tours happening, and a lot of people want the ex-WWF wrestlers first because those are the guys who are going to sell the tickets.
And, nobody talks about, when they talk about Vince McMahon, nobody ever mentioned his son and his daughter, probably the two most well-scrubbed-looking kids you've ever seen in your life. They make good grades. They're high achievers. They're not on drugs. Nobody says that. They look like they belong on the Lawrence Welk show. I mean, they're just meticulous, and they stand. They've got class, and it's like my daughter is going to be 9 years old. I hope that she becomes like one of the McMahon's children. I hope I can do that for her. See, you get these. There's a lot of the have-nots, and they become failures, and then they look in the mirror, and they're not all that they dreamed to be, and then they want to blame somebody. Well, why not blame H. Wayne Heisinger? Why not blame W. Clement Stone? Why not blame Vince McMahon, Walt Disney, Ed Sullivan? These are the people that succeed in life, and these are the people that the failures need to think, well, the world's against me because the world owes me a living because I'm here. He's trying to. I know. He's trying to run a business, and I think he's doing a very good job. By the way, if anybody thinks they can do better,
well, they haven't showed their heads yet if someone can do it better, because he certainly has. And I hate to wrap it up on that note. We got about 2 minutes to go here, and I wish we had another half hour to an hour to talk with the genius Lanny Poffo. And Lanny, you've been articulate as always, and you've been a gentleman as always, and I want to thank you for appearing on this program, and I wish you success with the group that I guess you'll be working with soon, WAW, and your new book, and I just want to thank you for coming on with us.
John, I got to say something to you, too. I'm glad you're back on the air. I think...
Thank you. There's a lot of people that aren't.
No, I'll tell you what, I am, because I believe we need to hear all sides, and you've got a lot of class, John, and you deserve to be on the air. You deserve to be heard. And anytime you call my number, I'll give you the best interview I can give you.
Well, I appreciate it very much, and it means a lot. It really does. Thank you, Lanny.
Thank you, John.
Okay, take care now.
Bye-bye.
Wow. It's pretty cool stuff.
I love how much he talks about class.
Yeah. I like some of the things he says. I mean, jealousy, eat holes through your liver. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, but everything he said, I mean, he says it in such a very profound, prolific, articulate way. And it really shone through on this episode. And it was funny that I was taking some notes as that last segment was going on in regard to how there's a lot of overseas tours happening, and people want the ex-WWF guys, and I was probably saying that because of the tour I was putting together at that time that people did not yet know about, because that's all I wanted to fill the card with those guys that had that WWF TV, and that people would know them because they were truly stars in other countries.
Yeah.
But what a great interview, man.
It was fantastic, because I even think that it's cool that, what's your feelings on Vince, what's your opinions on Vince. And there's a lot of good reasons to not like Vince. I'm not going to say this guy is a perfect dude. He's not an angel by any means. I like that he knows that opinion's already out there. So he goes, there's another side to this as well.
Mm-hmm.
And his whole bit about no one's pointing at his kids.
Right. And those kids were meticulous. Those kids were Shane and Stephanie. And this was, way before they got into the business. But they were, like you said, they could have been in a Sears Roebuck catalog. I mean, they could have been on Lawrence Welk, like you said. These kids were clean cut. And I actually felt for them. And I felt for Stephanie during the trial when Vince was on trial with the federal charges, because she was crying, and she was like so concerned for her daddy, and I felt for her, and Shane was just a young gentleman, just a young. It was he raised those kids right for sure, and so no matter how many bad things you could say about the dude, he raised some pretty good kids.
Yeah, I got the chance to meet Shane one time, and I thought classy was a really cool way to describe him even here, because I was like, and that's kind of how he carries himself now, with as much class and care as he can. Like, I was doing a backstage thing at Raw, and he came by and he goes, "Oh, hey, excuse me," like, and kind of like bumped by me a little bit, because there was a kid along with us right in front of me, and he wanted to walk right next to the kid, and then he just kind of like nudges the kid and says something along the lines of like, "Hey man, you like sneakers?" or something like that, like just kind of like a little thing. And the kid kind of goes like, "Yeah," and then looks up and goes, "Oh my gosh," like, and he was just played with the kid for a minute and just was like, and then was like, "All right, I gotta go." And I was just like, he sees this thing happening and he could have gone any direction, and he was like, "I'm gonna go give that kid a moment."
Yep.
And I just thought that was super cool and classy, and inadvertently gave me a moment. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. When you have those impressions, sometimes those impressions are, they last for a lifetime.
Yeah.
When someone is, especially somebody who's has notoriety, it takes the time out to be special and kind.
Yeah, because they've got the notoriety and they're busy enough that they don't have to do any of that, and they'll be fine. So they just
what a warm and fuzzy feeling we leave this episode today.
Yeah.
After the venom of the WCW show, we end it with a very charming Lanny Poffo and some wonderful anecdotes from the man that was known as the Genius, the book author, and really one of the nicest guys that you'd ever want to meet. And we miss him dearly.
Yeah, I was surprised at how much of the Lanny interview I just wanted to make clips of. I was like, I don't want to miss it. And maybe that's part of it. Maybe after hearing the first episode and then getting to this and then just hearing all this with Lanny, I was like, I love this dude.
Yeah. So. I think people will too, who listen to this podcast and watch it on YouTube, and also those patrons who get a chance to hear the entire show and those other appearances that Lanny made throughout the history of the show. Yeah, good one, Marsh. Good one. Yep.
Just a shame he passed just a couple years ago. It would have been nice to have him on and reflect.
A couple of months ago.
Well, yeah.
That would have been, and he would have done it.
Yeah,
that would have been really cool. That would have been really cool. People would have loved it. And because the last time I saw Lanny, it was at it was like on a Zoom. I was on there with Taz and Lanny. It was a fundraiser for the CAC. And it's up there on YouTube, I believe. And it was really cool to just kind of hang out and talk to him and see him after all these years. And it was fun. I don't know if Deborah was on there or not. If Medusa was on there, she might have been. I think she was, but it was like a bunch of people just trying to create awareness for the CAC. It's out there.
Yeah.
Let's try to find that. I mean, that was good. That was good. Anyway, that's it for today. I mean, that's a great episode in the books, and of course, every week we're going to have more and more of this stuff, and it's really it really warms your heart sometimes when you hear some of the good stuff and not the negative and the scandals and all the other trash that happens in the business and happened 30 years ago. To have a show like this one, even with Cornette in the first half of it, that was fun.
Yeah, there's glimmers. There's glimmers of hope and happiness in the business.
Yeah,
they're out there.
Yeah. But those days will be short, I'm sure.
Yeah, just a little.
All right, my friend. That'll wrap it up. And what do you got going on over the next week or so? I know you're having a trip planned to L.A. to see one of your favorite comedians, Mr. Ricky Gervais.
Yeah. I'm going to see Ricky Gervais. To me, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. He does not come to America often. And when he does, it's usually one or two appearances. It's usually in New York. It's not often. So the idea that for Christmas this past year, my now fiance had gifted me tickets to see Ricky. Big deal coming up. Couldn't be more excited about it. So that is going to be coming up. It's going to be cool.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I have, New York coming up in just a few short weeks in the 80s Wrestling Con deal. Looking forward to that. Getting up to New York, even if it's a short 4 days, to spend time with my nephew and to meet some of the fans and then go to a Mets game with my nephew. It's a quick 4-day trip. And I also got an upcoming coffee date with Jeannie Bassoni, Hollywood from Glow, who lives here in the same town that I do, and she reached out to me yesterday, so I'll get together with her, and I haven't caught up with her in a couple of years, so that should be fun.
That's cool.
So,
was she ever on the show back then?
She was on the Pro Wrestling Live show I did during the pandemic when I was sequestered in New York, and I used to go on the air. That's how this kind of started after, that's when I was with Brian, but I was bored and I was like, I want to do some Facebook Lives, and she was on one of those. So that we did that for like 6-7 months, I believe, during 2020. And they're out there. They're out there. Marsh. So let people know how they could find Ref Marsh out there on social media and some of the things that you want to plug. This is your time.
I'm at Ref Marsh on Twitter and Marsh Ref on Instagram. You can check out all the projects I'm working on with Medusa on her youtube.com/Queen of Carnage. My Wrestling on the Rock show is back. That's over at wrestlingontherocks.com or YouTube/Wrestling on the Rocks. And then obviously I'm doing this. Go like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, Pro Wrestling Spotlight. Check out those shorts, share them, let people know about it. And I'm starting to help out more and more with House of Wrestling. So go give Nick Hausman a little bit of love after his. I couldn't help but laugh when the press conference after WrestleMania.
Yeah,
Paul Heyman. Yeah, couldn't help but dig in on him.
There's a troublemaker over there.
Yeah, yeah. I even texted him. I was like, I'm sorry, I liked that so much.
Yeah, I mean, you get called out by Paul Heyman. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. And he did create quite a controversy in that AEW press conference. He didn't mean to, but I mean, Nick is making some news, and he's a great guy, really great guy. And without him, I would have never met you.
That's true. He's been a big proponent of mine for a long time, so I'm happy to give back to him. So, show him a little support too. One question I have for you before I jump out.
Okay.
At Wrestling Con, 80s Con, is there any particular talent you're excited to run into you haven't seen in a while?
Wendy Richter.
Very cool.
Because she was on my tour and she was great and classy lady. And other than that, I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing her. Really.
Yeah. That's cool. That's cool. Grab a picture. Make sure you get the pictures.
I'm definitely going to get a picture of her, and I'm going to invite her on this show because she does make her first appearance on Pro Wrestling Spotlight in 1993. So I think she'd be a great guest, especially with her history and WrestleMania 1 and Cyndi Lauper. And I think she could tell some really cool stories.
I think it'd be great.
Yep. All right, Marsh, thank you so much. We'll see you next week. And if you want to find me at John Arezzi, Twitter, at John Arezzi, Instagram, or all over Facebook at Matt Memories. And there's a Pro Wrestling Spotlight group there as well. Our Patreon, once again, patreon.com/John Arezzi. We have the other podcast for you to check out, Matt Memories from Madison Square Garden. And that one comes out on a monthly basis, co-hosted by Tim Poutre, written and researched by Richie Garcia. That's Matt Memories from Madison Square Garden. Thanks again to our producer and creative director, Marsh, and thanks to Patreon executive producers, Anthony Pyrus and Joe Holloway, and for all the patrons for your support helping with the production costs for this show. Until next week, when we relive more history for you, this is John Arezzi for the Pro Wrestling Spotlight.